Sam Conn, theathletic.com, with us to start this 4 o'clock hour on 365 Sports. Sam, I want to start with one of your great friends and somebody that also works at The Athletic with Max Olens. His article about former Colorado players and where they are, their story, their thoughts. And when I first started reading that, I couldn't stop reading it because it was, to me, intriguing. I don't know if there's been anything else like that written. What were your thoughts? And I know there's been an unbelievable reaction on either side of this thing.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I'm biased. Max is a great friend of mine, and I've probably worked with Max longer than anybody I've worked with in this industry in my entire time in it. I knew he had been working on it for quite some time, and I thought it was a lot of really good work because ultimately he told those player stories in a way that I don't think really had been told before. I think we heard some stuff last year. You know, great trainer and some of our recruiting reporters did a great job of talking to the recruits and some of the players. And I think some of the players that initially had experienced that. But this was a really good circle back to see a year later after all that attrition happened. Where did everybody end up? How did it go? You know, did you have any trouble landing anywhere and things like that? And I think it really humanizes players. And that's one thing that I think sometimes in the new era of college football with the transfer portal and NIL and all this stuff and player movement left and right, everything seems so transactional. And it's like, okay, how quickly can you build a winning team and all this stuff? And I think sometimes we forget these are people that we're dealing with and that they're real lives impacted here. And that's not to just say at Colorado, it happens everywhere. Guys get run off everywhere, or guys, or not necessarily, or maybe get run off or get encouraged to get in the portal elsewhere, or they just see the writing on the wall. And a lot of times, you know, I talked to JT Daniels last year, the former Rice quarterback, who had been through the portal multiple times. And he told me, he said more often than not, people are probably making mutual decisions. Coaches wanting to move on from guys, and also players knowing that, hey, maybe I'm further down the depth chart, I'm not going to get a chance. But I think how people handle that is important. And I think this was just a chance that Max gave all these people to say, hey, this is how it went. This is where we ended up. And this is how it's going a year later. And I thought it was a tremendous piece of work.
Sam, the college football playoff committee's meeting now. You know, they've gone through a lot of things. They've kind of hit the wall on tiebreakers and whatnot and all of this. Obviously, they kind of had to get a new system through to get the TV deal. Do you think they sacrificed drilling down in the details before just so they could get a deal done?
Probably so. I mean, ultimately, that I think was the number one thing, because I don't think you can move a lot of other pieces until you get that part done. Let's be honest. Yes, we are expanding the playoff for more opportunity access, but ultimately we're doing it for money, and the money comes from the TV network. So that's going to be the most important part of it, certainly. But I don't think there's anything wrong with just moving forward with what we have for now. You get your TV deal done. Let's see how this thing goes before we start to drill down and change all this other stuff. There's enough rapid change going on in the sport that I don't think it's urgent to change this right now, because we haven't even gone through a whole season of it. It's funny, actually. I was talking to Steve Sarkisian earlier today. He was in Houston for an alumni luncheon, and he mentioned the date January 20th. He said that's our goal, to be playing on January 20th, and it blew my mind, because I thought to myself, wow, we're going to be playing college football in late January. And how do teams get themselves ready to play that many games? How do you host training camp? How do you balance your summer workouts? You change that stuff so that you're fresh for the later part of the season. And we don't know how any of this stuff's going to work because nobody's been through it. So I think, taking everything deliberately and figuring out how this is going to work for a year or two, there's nothing wrong with that, without having to rush and jump and change everything else.
Yeah, that month of January is also a big one for guys whose seasons are over to get ready for the NFL draft. They pretty much like start of the year start to go work out right after bowl games are over with. So I saw where your Mark, he's speaking today, I guess, at those meetings out in Arizona, and said that he is in favor of a 14 team, but he did say, let's see how this first year plays out. So there is at least some reason from somebody involved here of like, can we watch this thing play out? Although he did say, I want 14 teams eventually.
Gosh, no, I don't.
I know.
Well, I don't see the need to expand it before we've actually played it. Let's see how it goes first. And like you said, we all know what the end game is for 14. 14 doesn't mean more at largest. 14 means more guaranteed bids. And who are those guaranteed bids going to? Anytime we get into the place of guaranteeing more bids for one conference or another, that I am not down with. I am wholeheartedly against that. One bid per league based on the highest rankings, I think, is a totally fair way to do it. Let's just leave it at that and let it simmer and let's enjoy it, because you know what? I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think we're going to get into late October, mid-November, and I think we're going to be dizzying ourselves with how many scenarios of which teams can get in and start envisioning the matchup. We have always filled college basketball brackets out. We're going to get to fill out a college football bracket this year.
Yeah.
That may actually be kind of fun, and I'm looking forward to it. Let's do that first before we do all this other 14-team stuff.
Right, yeah, no, I'm with you. I hadn't thought about the bracket part of that, but you're absolutely right. That's going to be really cool to be able to do. He also is in favor of expanding the basketball tournament, so he's just expansion.
No.
But yeah.
No, please, no, stop.
I know.
Stop. If you're not, please, Sankey did this, and Sankey got killed for this a couple months ago, right at the end of the tournament, and rightfully so. Let's not take away bids from mid-majors and low majors. That's ridiculous. Because, again, expansion is not – I can understand expansion because we want to include a larger percentage of Division I, especially in basketball, because Division I is more than 300 teams. So I understand saying, okay, if you want to expand to 80, I don't want to do it. I don't like it, but I can understand the argument. But if you're expanding it so you can put more power conference teams with 500 records in there, 500 conference records, miss me with that, man. Like let in more – champions who earn their way in rather than middling power conference.
Yeah, absolutely. Go
I
ahead.
think the argument kind of died, especially for all of them, when Oakland beat Kentucky.
The SEC got ducked in the first round. That really did. It really was opportune timing to kind of push back on that argument.
All right, so the biggest news of the day, let's get to that. The University of Houston has basically said, screw the NFL. We're going to have baby blue, Houston blue, powder blue, however you want to refer to it. We're going to have alternate blue uniforms, according to Chris Pesman, and we saw those, and they were nasty in a good way last year when they broke those out, Sam. So I don't know what the NFL's response will be, but I don't know that they have jurisdiction over colors. I think that would be an interesting fight, but Houston's pushing forward, and I commend them for that.
Who cares what the NFL thinks?
Exactly.
This is a Houston color, okay? The Oilers were a Houston team, and I don't want to get super into the whole Oilers-Titans thing, but the fact that they decided to wear that, that the Titans decided to wear that while playing Houston last year really pissed me off. And this is a color that I think still belongs to the city. I mean, the police force, HPD for a long time, the cars were that color, the uniforms were that color. I believe it's in the city flag. There's a lot of history there. Obviously, the Oilers, there's a lot of positive memories with it. And I thought the Cougars did a great job, and nobody saw it coming. I think they did a really good job of keeping that under wraps until, right before it came out. And I thought it was terrific, and I think it got people really excited. And good for Chris Pesman to challenge the NFL on this, because I think that's one thing that too many people are scared of the league because of the power and the money and everything that the league has. But it looks like from the sound of it by reading the article Joseph Duarte did, is that they've had their legal team check on all the P's and Q's. And I think the only thing that the NFL that they can really claim against them is the way the stripes are. I guess the stripes are pretty close to what the Oilers stripes were. So maybe they're going to have to tweak that a little bit, which is fine. Unfortunate, but good for U of H for standing up for it, because I think they generated a lot of excitement last year wearing them. And I'm sure if they're able to move forward with it, they'll sell a lot of merch doing it. And it'll be a really cool color to don out on Saturdays in the fall. I mean, I grew up watching the Houston Oilers, going to Houston Oilers games. And I really do wish that the city was able to keep that branding for its pro team whenever the pro team reignited. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And so we have to watch the Tennessee Titans wear that, which just seems wrong in all kinds of different ways to me.
Do you think Houston will wear those Columbia blue jerseys often? Will that be a staple, or will that be once or twice a year because their school colors have nothing to do with Columbia blue.
Yeah, I think it would only be like a once a year thing, maybe twice if that, just because the school colors are red and white. And then they also do occasionally wear the black uniforms, which a lot of times for primetime night games that are on national television, they often wear those black uniforms, which I think are pretty snappy. So I don't think it'll be a frequent thing. I think it'll be just another in the arsenal with it. Sometimes they'll wear red, sometimes they'll wear white, sometimes they'll wear black, and sometimes they'll wear the Columbia blues. And I think all four of them are pretty good.
Sam, what do you think Zachary Franklin's transfer portal plans are?
I don't know. Where is he going? I haven't heard that name in a long time. Where is he going?
Yeah. I mean, he's leaving Ole Miss. He could guess but theoretically, I would think every school in Texas, save for maybe the Longhorns because they've done so much at wide receiver, would certainly take him if he wanted to come back home. But he was, maybe, especially last year when he was in the portal, one of the most hotly sought after guys. I went to Ole Miss and then nothing happened. Right?
He injured his knee and never got right. Yeah,
never got right.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because he was one of the ones that I saw and thought to myself when he made the move. I thought to myself he was going to be one of those guys that went in there, improved his stock, broke out into a 1,000-yard season as an SEC receiver, and ended up being in the draft last weekend. So it was unfortunate to see that happen because he, in my opinion, when he was at UTSA, was absolutely one of the best receivers in the country. Certainly one of the most productive, objectively speaking. I would be willing to bet that Jeff Traylor would him back if he's interested in going back to UTSA. I don't know if that's in the cards or something that Zachary wants to do. But if you want to go back to the state of Texas, I know Houston just lost Sam Brown in the portal, so that there's probably a spot there. They lost a couple other guys as well. TCU and SMU are programs that also get bounce back guys. Heck, I even wonder if Baylor's a program that would kick the tires on them just because Baylor, I think for a few years, I feel like have been needing to improve that depth in that room. So I think there's a lot of options there, but we'll be interested to see if wherever he lands, if he can get back to the form that we saw him in his 3 years at UTSA.
Yeah, he had 100 and some catches or whatever I said yesterday. They had 4, and I know he had some injuries. I don't think UTSA is an option. I think that when he left, I think a door closed behind him. And now other schools, and you're right, he's very talented, and you're right, check on Baylor and the wide receiver position. Perhaps that's an option. But I don't think Zachary's going back to play for UTSA just from my own due diligence. So you did a story. Texas had 11 picks. They went through this wilderness, right, Sam, when it comes to the NFL draft, and they had some years where they completely struck out. Why now, with what Sarkisian's taken, players he's brought in, but also some from Tom Herman and those he's developed, is this just that this is what we're going to expect year in and year out? Maybe not 11, but 6, 8, 12, or 14 draft picks?
Yeah, I think we're headed that way. When you look at the way they're recruiting really well, and they're retaining players. You saw this spring window. They lost Terrence Brooks, who was a starter in the secondary, but for the most part, they haven't seen a lot of guys go that they were necessarily dying to keep, so to speak. Obviously, you would have liked in the winter window, you would have liked Malik Murphy to stay, but that's when it's quarterback, it's a whole different situation. But I think Sarkisian, to me, I'm starting to come around to the fact that I think he may be a really well-prepared and well-fit coach for this era because he's got a little bit of the pro background from his time with the Atlanta Falcons, so he knows what that type of player movement looks like and what it means to manage a roster that way. Obviously, he's a really good play caller, and he's a heck of a recruiter, and he's built a really good staff, and they're a really stable staff. They've got the same 3 coordinators now for 4 years, which is hard to do in college football. And the most important thing to me in this equation is player development. And so I look at a guy like Byron Murphy, who was a 3-star, borderline 4-star, not necessarily a slam dunk coming out of high school, and look at how he grew over 3 years. I look at Tavondre Sweat, who was a probably mid-level 3-star when he came out and look at how much he grew over time, not just in the game, but physically grew, from a physical standpoint. You look at Jonathan Brooks' progression from being the backup buried on the depth chart behind Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson. And when he gets his chance, boom, he's going. And he's a 1,000-yard rusher, one of the best in the country. Even Christian Jones, their offensive tackle, I thought he made big-time strides under Kyle Flood these last 2 years. I remember when they first got there, and he was not playing at the level that he did last year. And that's a testament to that coaching staff. That's a testament to that strength staff. And as long as he can keep some stability there and continue to recruit at this level, and then obviously if they win, then you're talking about a team that I think has a chance to get on a run. And if they do that, are going to start producing draft picks at the rate that you would have expected them to when they were recruited at a high level for 10 years and were not putting out those draft picks.
Sam, to follow that, did they have to crash and burn to get to where they are now? Because it felt like that, bus audio that we heard was exactly what they kind of needed to, start kind of clearing out the entitled nature of that program. Was that something that they needed 2005 to completely be so far in the rear view that none of the kids coming in thought that they had anything to do with it?
Yeah, I think there's some credence to that. And because if you keep winning 8 games or 9 games, or you're in contention, it's like, well, you're going to Band-Aid it. You're going to, fix this and fix that. And you don't really do wholesale changes. And I'll say this, it's not just the coaches and it's not just the football team. It's also that administration. There was a long time, we talk about all the football failures, but while that happened in the 2010s, there was also upheaval within that administration. The AD, obviously they had interim AD for a long time, but they had the Steve Patterson era, which did not go very well. You had turnover at the highest level as school president. And then once they got this trio now of, you got Jay Hartzell, who's been there now for a little while. You got Kevin Eltike, who's the Board of Regents chairperson, who's been in that spot for a bit. And Chris Del Conte, who I think is probably the most important piece of the puzzle, aside from the coach and all this, is Del Conte came with a really decorated resume from his work at TCU. And obviously had been in the Pac-12 before that, and had been in Rice before that. So I think having that alignment administratively and not having so many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, and you had everybody pulling in the same direction with the same goal, that was, I think, had to be done. And I think getting that foundation set was the first part. And then to your point, Paul, I think the second part is, I think this was a wake-up call for some guys. It was, I even think of Mora Ojimo, who had that press conference a couple springs ago, where he talked about, what guys' priorities on the team was and how they needed to get some of that out. And it was not, Sark didn't like that Mora Ojimo said that stuff, but you know what? There's a lot of Texas fans that agree with Mora Ojimo that day. And we're like, you know what? He's speaking the truth. And I think people needed to acknowledge that. People needed to say that and stare it in the face. And in some ways, they hit rock bottom when they lost to Kansas in 2021 and they lost 6 in a row. And I think that created the case for Sarkisian to basically start from scratch and kind of do some roster management in that and build it from the ground up. And gosh, it's hard to take exception with the way he's built it, because you look at the way they recruit, they look at the staff that he built, you look at the way they develop, the way they evaluate. And man, he's done a bang up job in 3 years. The question that we all have now is, can you do it again this year as you go into the SEC? And now everybody knows that you're a good team. Are you going to be able to sustain it?
Sam, thank you, man. Great stuff. Glad we had you on today. And anytime, Sam Conn Jr., theathletic.com. We went over a